Hi guys, and welcome to True Crime UK. Before we get into this video, can I ask you to give this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to hit the bell so you know of the notifications of when my videos come out. Anyway, let's get down to it. On the 17th of August 2002, two 10-year-old girls, Holly Marie Wells and Jessica Amy Chapman, were found in an irrigation ditch in Suffolk. They had both been murdered by local resident and school caretaker Ian Huntley. In this video, we are going to look at the events surrounding this barbaric crime. At 11:45 AM on Sunday the 4th of August 2002, Jessica Chapman left her home in Brook Street, Soham to attend a barbecue at the home of her best friend Holly Wells in nearby Red House Gardens. Chapman informed her parents of her intention to also give her friend a necklace engraved with the letter H she had purchased for her on a recent family holiday to Menorca. The two girls and a friend named Natalie Parr played computer games and listened to music for approximately half an hour before Parr returned home. By 3:15 PM, both girls had changed into Manchester United football shirts. At 5:04 PM, a photograph of the two friends was taken by Wells' mother before the children ate dinner with the other house guests. They then returned to playing in Wells' bedroom at approximately 6:10 PM. At approximately 6:15 PM, the two girls left the Wells residence without informing any of the house guests to purchase sweets from a vending machine at the local sports centre. While returning, Wells and Chapman walked past the college-close home of Ian Huntley, the senior caretaker at the local secondary school. Huntley lured the girls into his house, stating that his girlfriend, Maxine Carr, the girls' teaching assistant at St Andrew's Primary School, was also present in the house. Carr was in fact visiting her mother in Grimsby, Lincolnshire on this date. Nicola Wells entered her daughter's bedroom to invite the girl to say goodbye to her house guests, only to discover both children were missing from their home. Alarmed, she and her husband Kevin searched their house and nearby streets. Minutes after their daughter's 8:30 PM curfew had expired, Nicola Wells phoned the Chapman residence to determine if the girls were at this location, only to learn Leslie and Sharon Chapman were becoming concerned why their youngest daughter had not returned home. Following efforts by the families of both girls to locate their daughters, Wells and Chapman were reported missing by their parents at 9:55 PM. Police immediately launched an intensive search to locate the missing children. Over 400 officers were assigned to search for the girls. These officers conducted extensive house-to-house inquiries across Soham. Their efforts to search local terrain were bolstered by the assistance of local volunteers, and later some United States Air Force personnel stationed at nearby air bases. Cambridgeshire Police released a photograph Nicola Wells had taken of the children less than 2 hours before their disappearance, with both girls wearing Manchester United football shirts. A description of each girl was released to the media, describing both girls as being white, approximately 4 foot 6 inches in height, and slim. Chapman was described as being tanned, with shoulder-length brown hair. Wells was described as being fair, with blonde hair. The parents of both girls were adamant their daughters had been very wary of talking to strangers. This insistence was supported by the head teacher of St Andrew's Primary School, who informed reporters, "The possible danger from strangers is something we have impressed upon the children from an early age." Suspecting the children had been kidnapped, investigators questioned every registered sex offender in Cambridgeshire and neighbouring Lincolnshire. Over 260 registered sex offenders across the UK, including 15 high-profile paedophiles, were also questioned, although all were eliminated from the inquiry. On the 8th of August, CCTV footage of the girls, recorded minutes before their disappearance, was released to the public. This footage showed the children arriving at the local sports centre at 6:28 PM. A televised reconstruction of the children's last known movements were also broadcast nationally on the 10th of August, and both sets of parents granted an interview with presenter Colin Baker on TV's current affairs programme Tonight. These appeals for information regarding the whereabouts of Wells and Chapman would see more than 2,000 phone calls and tips received from the public. A candlelight vigil was held by the community on the 7th of August. Several members of the public reported having seen the children in the early days of the investigation. A jogger alerted police to the two mounds of recently disturbed earth he had encountered at Warren Hill, just outside Newmarket. The initial speculation by this individual had been that these mounds of earth may be the burial locations of the two missing girls. However, an overnight examination of this location revealed the two mounds of earth to be simply badger sets. One individual who claimed to have spoken with the girls immediately before their disappearance was 28-year-old Ian Huntley, who informed investigators on the 5th of August he had engaged in a brief conversation with both girls on his doorstep.
I don't know the girls. I stood on the front doorstep grooming my dog down. She'd run away and come back a bit of a mess. They just came across and asked how Miss Carr was, as she used to teach them at St Andrews. I just said she weren't very good as she hadn't got the job. And they just said, please tell her that we're very sorry. And off they walked in the direction of the library over there.
Police were suspicious of Huntley's account of the children's disappearance. His house was searched by a single police officer on the 5th of August, although no incriminating evidence was discovered on this date. This officer noticed numerous items of clothing upon the washing line, despite the fact it had been raining. In reference to the evident extensive cleaning of the house's interior, Huntley stated, "Excuse the dining room, we had a flood." This officer was unconvinced by Huntley's claims and he remained a strong suspect. One day later, on the 6th of August, Huntley drove from Soham to Grimsby to pick up Carr. Shortly before the two returned to College Close, a neighbour of Carr's mother, named Marion, observed the couple standing at the rear of the vehicle with the boot open. According to Marion, a pale, shaky Huntley had simply gazed into the boot for several moments, while Carr stood alongside him, her head bowed, weeping. When Huntley became aware of Cliff's presence, he had abruptly closed the boot. At approximately 12:30 p.m. on the 17th of August, a 48-year-old gamekeeper named Keith Pryor discovered the bodies of both girls lying side by side in a 5-foot deep irrigation ditch close to a pheasant pen near the perimeter fence of RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk, a location more than 10 miles east of Soham. Pryor had noticed what he later described as an unusual and unpleasant smell in the vicinity several days earlier. When returning to the area with two friends on the 17th of August, he had decided to investigate the cause of this odour. Walking through an overgrown verge approximately 600 yards from a partially tarmacked road, Pryor and one of his companions, Adrian Lawrence, discovered the children's bodies. Immediately upon viewing the corpses, Lawrence turned in the direction of his girlfriend, Helen Sawyer, and shouted, "Don't come any closer, Helen. Get back in the van." Lawrence immediately reported the discoveries to police. Both girls had been missing for 13 days when their bodies were found, and both corpses were in an advanced state of decomposition. In an apparent effort to destroy forensic evidence, the murderer or murderers had attempted to burn both bodies. Despite efforts to destroy evidence and hinder identification, investigators rapidly found who the two victims most likely were, and that both had not died at the location of their discovery. Numerous hairs, later determined to belong to Chapman, were also discovered on a tree branch close to the location of the girls' bodies. The following day, a Cambridgeshire Deputy Chief Constable named Keith Hodder released a press statement to the media, confirming the discovery of the children's bodies, adding that both families had been informed of the developments, and that although positive formal identification would take several days, investigators were as certain as they possibly could be the bodies those of Wells and Chapman. On the 21st of August, the bodies of both girls were conclusively identified by DNA testing. 9 days later, a public memorial service was held at a cathedral to remember and celebrate the lives of both girls. This service was attended by approximately 2,000 people. The Reverend Tim Alban Jones officiated at this service.
This past fortnight has rocked our whole community. There is not a person in Soham who is unmoved by what has happened. Certainly there have been many tears shed by friend and stranger alike. The whole town feels in some way violated by the disappearance of Jessica and Holly.
A formal inquest into the children's deaths was held at Shire Hall, Cambridge on the 23rd of August 2002. At this hearing, Coroner David Morris testified the bodies of both girls are partially skeletonized and that no precise cause of death could be determined for either. Although Morris stated that the most likely cause of death of both girls had been asphyxiation. Furthermore, Morris stated the girls had almost certainly not died at the location where their bodies had been discovered, and that both bodies had been placed at this location within 24 hours of their deaths. These conclusions were physically supported by an analysis of the shots of nettles located at the crime scene, which enabled forensic scientist Patricia Wiltshire to approximate that the actual time the bodies had been placed at this location had been almost 2 weeks prior. The funeral services for Wells and Chapman were conducted on consecutive days in September 2002. Services for both girls were held at St Andrew's Parish Church, and both were officiated by the Reverend Tim Alban Jones. Both girls were laid to rest in private ceremonies attended by only family and close friends, with Soham's Fordham Road Cemetery. The children are buried in adjacent graves. In the weeks following the disappearances, Huntley reluctantly granted several television interviews to media outlets such as Sky News and a regional BBC News.
I keep reliving that conversation and thinking perhaps something different could have been said. Perhaps kept them here a little bit longer and maybe changed events.
By the second week of the children's disappearance, Huntley had become an official spokesman for the community of Soham. In an interview granted by Sky News correspondent Jeremy Thompson during the second week of the search, he claimed to be holding on to a glimmer of hope the children would be found safe and well, claiming he had last seen the girls walking in the direction of a local library.
They seemed fine, very cheerful, happy, chatty.
Carr was also interviewed by the press during the second week of the search for the children.
Nobody believes that they would ever run away. They was very close to all their family. This is something I'll probably keep for the rest of my life, I think. It's what Holly gave me on the last day of term. She gave me this with a poem on the inside saying to a special teaching assistant, really. And we'll miss her a lot and we'll see her in the future. And that's the kind of girl she was. She was just lovely, really lovely.
In this interview, Carr confirmed Huntley's claims to have talked with the children on their doorstep, as she had been bathing before both girls had walked away from their doorstep, adding, "I only wish he had asked them where they were going. If only we knew then what we know now, then we could have stopped them or done something about it." Carr described Wells as being the more feminine of the two, adding that Chapman was more of a tomboy. Referring to Wells in the past tense, Carr stated she was just lovely, really lovely, before making a direct appeal to the children. Just get on the phone and just come home. Or if somebody's got them, just let them go. By the second week of children's disappearance, Huntley had begun to lose weight and was displaying visible symptoms of insomnia. To one officer he said, "You think I've done it? I was the last person to see them," before beginning to weep. His erratic behaviour and apparent distress led to him being prescribed antidepressants on the 13th of August.
That way inclined amongst us and us not knowing who they are. People that way inclined.
Having actively participated in the search for the children, Huntley regularly asked police officers questions such as how their investigation was progressing and just how long DNA evidence could survive before deteriorating. One of these officers observed 3 vertical scratches upon Huntley's left jaw, each measuring approximately 3 centimetres, which he claimed had been recently inflicted by his dog. On the 16th of August, 12 days after the children's disappearance, Huntley and Carr were first questioned by police. Both were questioned for approximately 7 hours. Each provided formal witness statements to investigators before being placed in a safe house in the village of Histon. By this date, police had received information from several Grimsby residents who had recognised Huntley in the television interviews. These individuals recalled that he had been accused of rape several years earlier. Other individuals recalled that, contrary to her own televised claims, Carr had in fact been socialising in Grimsby town centre on the night that the girls had disappeared and not in the home in Soham, as she had indicated in the interview. Police discovered charred remnants of the children's clothes at Soham Village College on the 16th of August. The same evening, police conducted a thorough search of both 5 College Close and the grounds of Soham Village College where Huntley worked. Although each room of Huntley's home had evidently been recently thoroughly cleaned, these searches located items declared as being of major importance to the investigation. Although the evidence was not made public at the time, the items recovered from the school grounds included items of clothing the girls had been wearing when last seen, including their charred and cut Manchester United shirts, which were recovered from a bin within a hangar at Huntley's place of work. Fibres recovered upon these items of clothing proved to be a precise match to samples retrieved from Huntley's body and clothing, as well as from 5 College Close. Furthermore, his fingerprints were recovered from the bin. Huntley's car was also subjected to a detailed forensic examination on 16th of August. The forensic examination of this vehicle revealed the car had also been recently extensively cleaned, although traces of a distinctive mixture of brick, dust, chalk and concrete of precisely the same type used to pave the road leading to where the girls' bodies would be discovered were found around the wheel arches and upon and around the pedals. Furthermore, a cover from the rear seat was missing, and the lining of the boot had been recently removed and replaced with an ill-fitting section of household carpet. Having discovered the children's clothes at Soham Village College, police decided to arrest Huntley and Carr. Both were arrested on suspicion of abduction and murder at 4:30 a.m. on the 17th of August. During initial questioning, Huntley refused to answer questions and appeared evasive, confused and emotionally detached, occasionally drawling throughout police attempts to question him in an effort to fake symptoms of a mental illness. This tactic left police with no option but to refer Huntley to a mental hospital to undergo psychological evaluation. Carr quickly confessed to detectives she had lied about her whereabouts and her partner's actions on the 4th of August. Shortly before she had returned to Soham from Grimsby 3 days later, Huntley had claimed to her in a phone call to have seen the two girls shortly before their disappearance, admitting, "The thing is, Maxine, they come in our house." According to Carr, Huntley then informed her the children had entered their home in order for Wells to stop her nosebleed. He then claimed to her Chapman had sat upon the bed as he had helped Wells control the bleeding from her nose before both girls had left their home. Referencing one of the 1998 rapes he had committed but had earlier claimed to her to have been falsely accused of, Huntley then began voicing concerns as to again being falsely accused of involvement on this occasion, also claiming his previous arrest had caused him to suffer a nervous breakdown. She had therefore later agreed to make up a false story with her partner to support his version of events. After being informed of the discovery of the children's bodies and the ample evidence leading to Huntley's guilt, including his fingerprints being recovered from the bin in which the children's clothes had been found, Carr burst into tears, shouting, "No, it can't have been. It can't have been. He hasn't done it." Despite these revelations, Carr initially remained emotionally attached to Huntley and her belief in his innocence to both the police and her family. By the 20th of August, investigators had sufficient evidence from Huntley's home, vehicle and Soham Village College to charge him with 2 counts of murder. He was charged with these offences while detained for observation at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire, and all preliminary hearings against him were postponed until the conclusion of his mental health assessment. Carr was also charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice. She was further charged with 2 accounts of assisting an offender on the 17th of January 2003. While held on remand at Holloway Prison, Carr regularly inquired as to Huntley's welfare and is known to have wrote several letters in which she declared her love for him. Carr would only stop all contact with Huntley in December 2002. To determine Huntley's state of mental health, he was detained under Section 48 of the Mental Health Act for almost 2 months at Rampton Secure Hospital. His mental state was assessed by Christopher Clark, a consultant forensic psychiatrist, to determine whether he suffered from any form of mental illness and whether he was mentally competent to stand trial. Clark concluded in October that Huntley did not suffer from any major mental or psychotic illness. On 8th of October, Huntley was deemed mentally competent to stand trial. Mr. Huntley made clear attempts to appear insane. "I have no doubt that the man currently and at the time of the murders was both physically and mentally sound, and therefore, if he is found guilty, carried out the murders totally aware of his actions." Having been declared mentally fit to stand trial, Huntley was faced with a sentence of life imprisonment if a jury could be convinced of his guilt. He was subsequently transferred to a segregation unit at Woodhill Prison in Milton Keynes, Buckinghamshire. On the 9th of June 2003, he attempted a failed suicide attempt by consuming 29 antidepressants which he had accumulated in his cell. Huntley was later transferred to London's Belmarsh Prison at a preliminary hearing held at the Old Bailey on the 16th of June 2003. Huntley pleaded not guilty to the formal charges of murdering Wells and Chapman, although he chose to plead guilty to the charge both stood accused of, conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Carr pleaded not guilty to the charges of attempting to pervert the course of justice and assisting an offender. The trial of Huntley for the murders of Wells and Chapman opened at the Old Bailey on the 5th of November 2003 before Mr. Justice Alan Moses. Huntley was charged with 2 counts of murder, to which he entered a plea of not guilty. Carr was charged with 2 counts of assisting an offender and 1 count of perverting the course of justice. In his opening statement on behalf of the Crown Prosecutor, Richard Latham QC described the last day of the friends' lives and how by pure chance they had happened to pass by Huntley's home at a time when Carr was not present. Latham said Huntley had deliberately lured the girls into his home and that both girls had been murdered shortly thereafter, with cell site analysis proving. Latham further emphasised that mobile phone records and eyewitness accounts proved Carr had been in Grimsby on the evening in question, proving a statement she had been given to the police and press alike had been false. Latham then outlined the details of how Keith Pryor and his two friends had discovered the children's bodies on the 17th of August. Referencing the likely motive for the girls' murder and the actual cause of death for each, Latham stated that due to the extensive state of decomposition of the bodies, the coroner had been unable to determine the precise cause of death of either child, or whether the girls had been sexually assaulted before or after death. However, Latham stated neither body showed signs of compressive neck injuries, knife wounds, drugging or poisoning, and that both girls had most likely died of asphyxiation. In a direct reference to Huntley's claims both girls' deaths had been accidental, Latham stated that only one person knows what happened after the friends entered his home. However, he further stressed the cause of death was undoubtedly murder, adding, 10-year-old girls don't just drop dead. In reference to Carr's attempts to pervert the course of justice, Latham stated that as surely as night follows day, the two had conspired to make up a false alibi to divert suspicion from Huntley. Although he warned the jury Carr could only be convicted of assisting an offender if they believed she had known Huntley had murdered the girls. Over the course of 3 days, Latham outlined the efforts of both defendants to divert suspicion away from Huntley and Huntley's own efforts to destroy all evidence. On the 1st of December, Huntley testified before the court in his own defence. Responding to questioning by his own defence counsel, Huntley admitted both girls had died in his house, but denied that either death had been intentional. According to Huntley, he, Wells and Chapman had entered his bathroom to stem a mild nosebleed Wells had been suffering. The bath was already filled with water as he had been cleaning his dog that afternoon. In the bathroom he had slipped and accidentally knocked Wells into his bath while helping her stop her nosebleed, and this unintentionally act had caused her to drown as he himself had simply panicked and froze. He further claimed Chapman had witnessed his accident and began repeatedly screaming, "You pushed her!" and that he had then accidentally suffocated her while attempting to stop her screaming, which had preoccupied his attention as opposed to ensuring Wells did not drown. By the time his state of panic had waned, it had been too late to save the lives of either of the children, and that his first memory had been of himself sitting on his vomit-stained landing close to Chapman's body. When questioned as to his failure to call emergency services and subsequent extensive efforts to both destroy evidence and divert suspicion from himself, Huntley insisted he had first become preoccupied with whether the police and public alike would believe the girls' deaths had actually been accidental, and he had therefore decided to conceal all evidence of the deaths, as opposed to either notifying police or paramedics. On the 3rd of December, Carr went into the witness box to testify in her own defence. Questioned as to the effort she had subsequently made to mislead both police and the media to divert suspicion from her partner, Carr emphasised she had only lied to police, the media and anyone who asked to protect Huntley, who had repeatedly assured her of his innocence of any wrongdoing and his fear of being fitted up by the police for the girl's disappearance, should they discover the 1998 rape allegation made against him. She further claimed to have referred to Wells and Chapman using past tense merely because she had worked with the children in the past. On the 10th of December, counsel for both prosecution and defence delivered their closing arguments. The jury deliberated for 4 days before reaching their verdicts against both defendants. On the 17th of December 2003, they returned the majority verdict of guilty on 2 counts of murder against Huntley. He was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of imprisonment to be imposed by the Lord Chief Justice at a later date. Huntley's face displayed no emotion as the verdict was announced, although the mothers of both Wells and Chapman burst into tears. Although Carr willingly pleaded guilty to the charge of perverting the course of justice, she pleaded not guilty to the charge of assisting an offender. The jury accepted Carr's insistence that she had only lied to police and media in order to protect Huntley, because prior to their arrest she had actually believed his claims of innocence. As such, she was found not guilty of assisting an offender. Carr was sentenced to serve 3.5 years in prison for perverting the course of justice. Minutes after the convictions, the parents of both girls granted an interview to the media. Discussing Huntley's mindset, Leslie Chapman opinioned, "I think he was a time bomb waiting to go off, and both our girls were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I hope the next time I see him, it will be like we saw our daughters, and it will be in a coffin." The minimum term of imprisonment Huntley should serve before being considered eligible parole was decided on 29 September 2005. On this date, High Court Judge Mr. Justice Moses announced that Huntley must remain in prison until he had served a minimum of 40 years imprisonment, a term which would not allow parole eligibility until 2042, by which time Huntley would be 68 years old. In setting this minimum term of imprisonment, Mr. Justice Moses stated, "The order I make offers little or no hope of the defendant's eventual release."